There's a moment every man faces when he finally realizes this uncomfortable truth. If she doesn't fear losing you, you will eventually lose her. Not because she's cruel, not because she wants to hurt you, but because human nature, her nature, cannot value what feels guaranteed. You've felt it before, haven't you? The shift, the slower replies, the colder tone, the way her attention fades the moment you give her too much of yours. And you thought the answer was to try harder, to be nicer, to show her you care. But here's the reality no one ever told you. The more you make her the center of your world, the less space she leaves for you in hers. Women don't fear losing a man who's always available. They fear losing the man who stands on his own, the man who doesn't bend his purpose for validation, the man whose silence has weight, whose presence has gravity, and whose absence is felt more deeply than his affection ever was. Today, you're not here to learn tricks. You're here to learn truth, the psychology behind female desire, emotional tension, and the quiet fear that makes a woman protect the connection instead of taking it for granted. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly how to become the kind of man she never wants to lose. Not by chasing, not by playing games, but by becoming a man who finally stops losing himself. Let's begin. There is a truth every man eventually learns, usually the hard way. A woman cannot value what she believes she cannot lose. It doesn't matter how much effort you give, how loyal you are, how deeply you care. If she knows you'll always be there. If she knows no matter how she acts, you'll stay. If she knows your world begins and ends with her, then your presence stops feeling precious, and it starts feeling predictable. Women don't pull away because they're cruel. They pull away because certainty kills desire. And nothing creates certainty faster than a man who is permanently available, permanently responsive, permanently waiting. When she feels she already has you fully, easily, without having to earn anything, her mind begins to wander. Her effort drops. Her curiosity fades. Her attention shifts. She stops investing because she feels no risk. This is not a game. This is not manipulation. This is biology. A woman is wired to value what is scarce, not what is guaranteed. She respects what she could lose, not what she can take for granted. You've seen this in your own life. The moment you cared too much, she cared less. The moment you put her first, she quietly moved you to the back. The moment you made her your entire emotional world, she made you a small part of hers. It's not because you weren't good enough. It's because you stopped being rare. When a woman senses you're too available, too open, too transparent, she doesn't feel safe, she feels superior. And superiority destroys attraction. She doesn't desire a man she can control. She doesn't choose a man she feels above. She doesn't respect a man who orbits her like a satellite. Respect is the foundation of desire, and desire is the foundation of fear. The healthy fear of losing something valuable. So when she shows no fear of losing you, the truth is painful but simple. You've already lost her emotional investment. Not because she met someone else, not because something went wrong, but because you unintentionally removed every part of yourself that made you worth losing. This is where most men break themselves. They think the solution is to try harder, to give more, to be nicer, gentler, more available. But trying harder only deepens the problem. When you chase her distance with more closeness, you eliminate the last remaining fragments of polarity. You confirm her suspicion that she has full control, and when she feels total control, she feels zero fear. This chapter sets the foundation for everything that follows. A woman cannot value a man who does not value himself above her. She cannot fear losing a man who fears losing her more, and she will not invest in a man who becomes emotionally dependent on her validation. Harsh truth? Yes, but it's also liberating, because it means her behavior is not random. It's a direct reflection of the standard you set, the energy you hold, the boundaries you maintain. Scarcity creates value, self-respect creates scarcity, and emotional discipline creates presence, the kind she feels in her body, not through your words. If she doesn't feel the risk of losing you, you can't blame her for acting like you're already lost. If a woman feels she fully understands you, she won't fear losing you. Not because you're not valuable, but because nothing creates desire less than certainty. Most men misunderstand the word mystery. They think it means being cold, distant, or strategic. But mystery isn't about withholding information. It isn't about disappearing, being vague, or acting unpredictable on purpose. Mystery is depth. Mystery is purpose. Mystery is a life she cannot fully access, only witness. Women don't fear losing a man who is simply hard to read, is tractor. They fear losing a man who is hard to replace. A man with a world of his own. A man with a mind she can't decode. A man with a life that moves forward, whether she is there or not. A man whose emotions are grounded, controlled, and directed towards something greater than romance. This is the mystery that creates desire. And this is why oversharing kills attraction. Most men reveal too much too soon. Every insecurity, every past trauma, every thought, every plan, every emotion. They believe openness creates connection. It doesn't. It creates predictability. A woman cannot crave what she already fully understands. She cannot respect a man who seeks emotional validation through overexposure. She cannot fear losing a man who hands her every piece of himself for free. You're not supposed to be an open book. You're supposed to be a man with chapters she earns access to, not because you're hiding, but because you're living. You're not hiding, you're just not performing. When a man has no internal world, no mission, no solitude, no ambitions, passions, or private battles, he becomes empty. And an empty man becomes emotionally transparent. She sees everything. She knows everything. She predicts everything. And what is predictable can never be powerful. Mystery is created not through avoidance, but through abundance of identity. You have depth because you think deeply. You have mystery because you build silently. You have gravity because your goals are bigger than your need to be understood. This is what draws a woman in, not the silence, not the distance, but the inner world she cannot control. Women adapt to men whose lives feel bigger than romance. They invest in men who don't pause their purpose for validation. They feel fear, the healthy kind, when they sense, if I don't show up fully, another woman will notice what I'm taking for granted. This is not jealousy. This is psychological reality. Scarcity amplifies value. When she knows your time isn't unlimited, when she knows your attention isn't free, when she knows your world is moving with or without her, she feels something powerful, the awareness that she does not own you, and that awareness creates desire. It creates investment. It creates fear, not fear of abandonment, but fear of losing a man with a life she admires. Mystery isn't an act. Mystery is identity. A man who is full of himself, full of purpose, full of ambition, full of mission, never needs to manufacture depth. He is depth. And because she cannot fully control him, she cannot fully relax. Because she cannot fully decode him, she cannot fully detach. Because she cannot fully predict him, she cannot fully replace him. When you become a man of depth, she doesn't fear your silence. She fears losing access to your world. There is a moment every man eventually faces. A moment when he realizes that the more he explains himself to a woman, the less she respects him. Not because explanations are wrong, but because explaining is a plea, not a position. When a man tries to justify his decisions, explain his timing, defend his silence, or convince her why he did what he did, he collapses his frame. He moves from leading to pleasing. And once you enter the pleasing role, it's over. Not the relationship, the respect. Women don't lose interest because you made a mistake. They lose interest when you behave like a man who doesn't trust his own choices. You feel it every time you type a long paragraph. Every time you try to clear things up. Every time you try to soften her reactions with explanations, you feel that internal sting. That voice that says, "I'm trying too hard." That sting is your intuition reminding you. A man doesn't explain his frame. A man stands on it. Here's the Stoic truth. A woman doesn't respect a man who asks for permission through explanation. She respects a man who moves with direction, regardless of her reaction. Because explaining is never neutral. It signals something beneath the words. Fear. Fear of losing her. Fear of conflict. Fear of disappointing her. Fear of being misunderstood. But you cannot lead from fear. When she challenges your boundaries, and you respond with a soft justification, you teach her something destructive. Your decisions are negotiable. When she tests your time, and you over-explain why you were busy, you reveal something even worse. Your priorities bend under pressure. When she pulls away emotionally, and you chase with explanations about your feelings, you show her the fatal truth. Your identity depends on her reassurance. That kills attraction instantly. Women don't want to carry a man's emotional weight. They don't want to guide his decisions. They don't want to manage his insecurities. They want a man whose center is unshakable. A man who moves calmly, not reactively. A man whose choices stand on their own legs, with or without her approval. Because here's the psychology. Explanations come from insecurity. Direction comes from presence. Presence is what she feels when you speak less but mean more. Presence is when you say, "Tonight doesn't work, we'll do another day," without a single extra sentence. Presence is when you hold your position, even when she tries to pull you emotionally off balance. A woman respects men who move decisively, not perfectly decisively, Because decisive men make women feel safe. Not safe emotionally, safe in masculine stability. A man who explains is hoping not to lose her. A man who leads is not afraid of the outcome. And that energy difference is everything. Stop trying to convince her of your intentions. Stop trying to make her feel comfortable with your decisions. Stop letting her emotions dictate your posture. You're not here to be understood. You're here to be grounded. Speak less. Mean more. Move calmly. Respond with certainty, not justification. When you stop explaining yourself, something powerful happens. Your presence becomes undeniable. Your silence becomes leadership. Your boundaries become felt instead of argued. And that's when she shifts. That's when she leans in. That's when she starts respecting what she once tested. Because women don't fear losing the man who pleases them. They fear losing the man whose presence forces them to rise. A man becomes truly powerful in a woman's mind the moment she realizes this truth. You want her, but you don't need her. Most men reverse this. They act like she is the only source of meaning in their life, the only source of validation, the only source of connection, excitement, emotion. And the moment a man collapses his life into a single woman, he stops being a man with options and becomes a man with dependence. And women feel that shift instantly. Here's the psychology. A woman does not fear losing a man whose entire world revolves around her. She fears losing the man who has a world outside of her. Because that man cannot be controlled, cannot be manipulated emotionally, cannot be shaken by silence, distance, or tests. He stands on abundance, not attachment. But abundance does not mean you flirt with other women. It does not mean you play games. It does not mean you live like a playboy. Abundance means your life is full of purpose, direction, and meaning. Before she ever enters the picture, your options aren't other women. Your options are your mission, your craft, your health, your skills, your tribe, your vision. A woman senses your abundance not by what you say, but by how you move. When your schedule is full because you're building something, she feels it. When your attention is selective because you're focused on growth, she feels it. When you don't drop everything for her messages, not out of pride but out of priorities, she feels it. When you no longer treat her as the only meaningful part of your day, she feels it. And that feeling triggers something ancient inside the female instinct. This man is valuable beyond me. That is what creates the fear of losing you. Not threats, not jealousy, not manipulation, but your abundance. Because everything in human psychology follows a simple rule. Scarcity increases value. Abundance expands power. When you show her not through words, but through lifestyle, that your life moves with or without her, you instantly shift the dynamic. Suddenly, she is the one monitoring the effort. She is the one checking your consistency. She is the one wondering if she still has the same place she once assumed. Suddenly, she is the one trying, because women fight hardest for the man who can walk away without losing himself. You've seen this before. The man who has no life outside the relationship loses the relationship. The man who has a mission, a purpose, a community, a direction, never has to chase the relationship. It moves toward him. Abundance is magnetic. A woman gravitates toward the man whose life is already moving, already expanding, already evolving. Because deep down, she knows something. If she doesn't match his pace, another woman eventually will. This isn't competition, it's human instinct. But here is the Stoic twist. You do not build abundance to trigger her fear. You build abundance because it is the natural posture of a disciplined man. You don't live fully so she chases. You live fully because that is the only life worthy of your potential. And, ironically, that is what makes her chase. Not because you push her away, but because you stop treating her as your emotional oxygen. Not because you flaunt options, but because you embody options. Not because you want control, but because you choose freedom. Women don't fear losing the man who needs them. They fear losing the man who chooses them from strength, not from emptiness. Become that man, a man whose world is rich, full, and alive. A man whose presence is a gift, not a necessity. A man whose life continues to grow, with or without her place in it. Because when she feels that, when she feels your abundance, she stops taking you for granted and starts fighting to stay in your world. There is a moment in every man's life where everything changes. Not when he gets the woman, not when he impresses her, not when she finally shows him affection, but when he realizes this: if I must lose myself to keep her, then she was never mine to begin with. This is the turning point, the psychological shift, the line that separates men who get respected from men who get used. Because nothing triggers a woman's fear of losing you stronger than this one thing: your ability to walk away calmly, quietly, without hesitation, not as a threat, not as a tactic, not as revenge, but as a principle. See, most men are terrified of losing a woman, and that fear dictates everything. They tolerate disrespect, they overinvest, they accept coldness, they chase harder when she gives less, they shrink their boundaries to avoid conflict, they shrink themselves to keep her comfortable. But here's the truth: women will never say out loud. The moment you show her that you fear losing her, she stops fearing losing you. That's when everything collapses. Because in every relationship dynamic, someone is afraid to lose someone more. And the one who fears more loses more. But here's the paradox. You don't fix this by becoming colder. You fix it by becoming whole. A woman doesn't fear losing the man who needs her. She fears losing the man who chooses her, but does not depend on her for identity, happiness, or direction. That man is dangerous in the most powerful way. He is emotionally independent. He is self-led. He is centered in something deeper than romance. He can love fully, without becoming fragile. He can attach, without collapsing his identity. He can give, without begging for anything in return. A man like that does not threaten to walk away. He simply will, if the situation violates his values, his peace, or his dignity. And that is what makes him impossible to replace. Because women don't respect men who stay no matter what. They respect men who stay only when the connection is worthy. A man who can walk away is a man who has standards. A man who has standards is a man she cannot play with. A man she cannot play with is a man she cannot afford to lose. Here's the psychology. When you fear losing her, You start negotiating with disrespect. But when you stop fearing losing her, you start negotiating with truth. You say less. You observe more. You speak through actions instead of reactions. You move with calm detachment instead of emotional panic. She feels that shift instantly. Your energy stops clinging. Your presence stops chasing. Your attention becomes selective. Your silence becomes powerful. And suddenly, she is the one analyzing the dynamic. She is the one feeling uncertainty. She is the one sensing the distance. She is the one questioning her behavior. Because now, she realizes something she didn't before. You are willing to lose her if she forces you to lose yourself. And that flips the entire psychological script. Women instinctively test men to see if their strength is real, but the one test no woman expects a man to pass is the test of walking away quietly when she crosses a line. Not angrily, not dramatically, not with chaos or emotional outbursts, just silence, just distance, just movement, because that's the moment she feels the truth of who you are. A man she can't break. A man she can't manipulate. A man she can't emotionally trap. A man who will not stay where he is not valued. That is the man she fears losing. And here's the deeper Stoic lesson. You don't walk away to change her. You walk away to protect you. Your peace, your purpose, your self-respect. And, ironically, that is what makes her change. Not your begging, not your explanations, not your effort, but your refusal to abandon your own soul for someone who isn't giving you the same energy in return. A man who can walk away becomes unforgettable, not because he is cold, but because he is complete. Not because he is distant, but because he is disciplined. Not because he is emotionless, but because he is sovereign. And the moment she feels that sovereignty, she realizes something she never expected. She needs your presence, far more than you ever needed her validation. That is the power of walking away. That is the moment her fear of losing you begins. Every man has lived this moment. She gets quieter. Her replies get shorter. Her energy becomes colder. The warmth that once felt effortless suddenly turns into distance. Most men panic at this stage. They lean in, they fixate, they try harder, they try to win her back with reassurance, validation, and overinvestment. But here is the truth no one teaches young men. When she pulls away, the relationship isn't being tested. You are. And what she's watching is not your words, but your reaction, because women don't pull away to punish you. They pull away to measure you, to see if your frame collapses under emotional pressure, to see if your identity depends on her attention, to see if your sense of self is rooted in her mood swings or your own grounding. Most men fail this test instantly. They chase, they beg, they cling, they try to fix something that isn't theirs to fix. But here is the Stoic truth. She isn't testing your love. She's testing your spine. A woman can only truly respect a man she cannot emotionally destabilize, because respect is born from steadiness, not sweetness. So when she pulls away, your mission is simple. Do nothing, change nothing, chase nothing. Not out of indifference, but out of inner stability. Because your reaction creates one of two realities in her mind. Reality 1, If you panic, she knows she controls your emotions. The moment you chase harder, the moment you double text, the moment you explain yourself, the moment you try to make things okay, she feels it. I can move this man emotionally. His identity depends on me. I control the dynamic, and that feeling kills her attraction instantly. Why? Because women are biologically wired to trust the man who cannot be shaken, not the one who bends the second she shifts her energy. If pulling away makes you overreact, you've just shown her that your emotional state is her responsibility. And no woman desires that burden. Reality 2. If you stay calm, she realizes she cannot move you. This is where everything flips. When she withdraws and sees that you stay centered, stay grounded, stay focused on your mission, stay consistent with your standards, stay emotionally unfazed, her psychology changes. Suddenly she begins to think, why didn't he collapse? Why didn't he chase? Why isn't he reacting? Does he not need me? Did I misjudge his value? Your calm becomes a mirror she wasn't prepared to look into. Your silence becomes weighty. Your neutrality becomes magnetic. Your steadiness becomes attractive. Because now she realizes, you are not a man who reacts. You are a man who decides. And a man who decides is a man who cannot be controlled. That is the energy she fears losing. Here is the deeper pattern. When she pulls away, if you chase, she feels superior. If you freeze, she feels unsafe. If you retaliate, she feels attacked. If you detach with dignity, she feels your value. The key is not to ignore her. The key is to not abandon yourself. This is the psychological stance that wins. I do not punish you with silence. I simply refuse to abandon my peace because you are confused about yours. Your emotional stillness forces her to confront her own behavior. Without drama, without conflict, without chasing, she starts to feel the cost of her distance. Not because you guilt-tripped her, but because you didn't give her the reaction she expected. And that is the moment fear of losing you begins. Because a man who does not crumble when she pulls away is a man she cannot afford to lose. A man she must respect. A man she must step toward. A man she must invest in, not because he demanded it, but because his unshakable presence makes her rise to meet him. Here's a truth men learn the hard way. A woman only values what she invests in, never what she is handed for free. Most men do the opposite. They give too much, too early, too easily. They pour energy, effort, attention, affection, all before she's earned any of it. And then they wonder why she pulls away, why she takes them for granted, why she stops trying. It's simple psychology. People don't treasure what required no investment. They treasure what they had to work for. A woman doesn't attach to what she receives. She attaches to what she builds. So the shift is not about making her chase. It's about creating a dynamic where she naturally leans in, because the connection has become hers to maintain, not yours. 1. Investment creates value for her, not you. When you chase, you're the one investing. When she invests, she starts protecting the connection. Women are emotional investors. The more they give, the more they guard what they've given. Her attachment is built through effort, pursuit, initiative, vulnerability, time, attention, emotional risk. Every time she contributes something, a call, a message, a check-in, a plan, a gesture, the bond becomes stronger for her. But when you're doing everything, she has nothing at stake, nothing to lose, nothing to protect. And a woman who has nothing to lose has no fear of losing you. 2. Your job is not to chase, it's to create space for her to step in. Stop filling every silence. Stop initiating every conversation. Stop planning every date. Stop supplying all the effort while she sits comfortably receiving. Your job is not to overgive. Your job is to be the gravity she orbits, not the satellite orbiting her. You lead by direction, not by over-pursuit. For example, you don't text good morning every day. You reply warmly when she does. You don't plan every outing. You create the opportunity and let her participate. You don't keep conversations alive artificially. You match her energy, not exceed it. When you stop doing everything, you create a void, and voids pull people in, not through force, but through emotional gravity. A high-value man does not chase. He invites, and a woman invests when she feels that invitation is rare, not guaranteed. 3. When a woman starts investing, everything changes. Her tone changes. Her effort changes. Her behavior changes. Suddenly, she's the one checking in first, asking about your day, suggesting plans, trying to look her best for you, trying to maintain closeness, worrying when you go quiet, protecting the connection instead of drifting from it. Why? Because she now has skin in the game. Because she now has something to lose. Because the connection feels like hers, not something you're forcing her to carry. A woman becomes devoted when she feels she must earn and maintain your presence. This is not manipulation. This is emotional economics. What we fight for, we respect. What we respect, we protect. What we protect, we fear losing. 4. Her fear of losing you comes from her effort, not your effort. Most men think women fear losing a man because of what he gives. Wrong. Women fear losing a man because of what they've given. Because once she invests, she asks herself, what if another woman gets the version of him I worked for? What if I stop trying and someone else benefits from it? What if I lose him after I've already revealed my feelings? This is why the dynamic flips. Instead of you worrying about her pulling away, she worries about losing the place she worked to earn. Instead of you trying to impress her, she starts bringing her best to keep your attention. Instead of you chasing, she becomes the one who nurtures the bond. This is the moment fear of losing you is born. Not when you give her everything, but when she realizes she could lose the man she invested in. 5. The lesson. Stop chasing. Start leading. Create space. Hold your frame. Let her step in. The woman who invests in you will value you, respect you, protect the connection with you, and fear losing a man like you because you didn't buy her loyalty with effort. You inspired it through presence. A woman doesn't fear losing a man because he loves her. She fears losing a man because he respects himself. A man with standards, A man with backbone. A man with a center that cannot be moved by mood swings, emotional storms, or subtle manipulation. That kind of man is rare, painfully rare, and rarity creates value, and value creates fear of loss. Most men think respect is earned by being nice, being accommodating, being endlessly patient. But a woman is not wired to respect a man who bends himself to avoid tension. She respects the man who stays grounded, even if that means she gets uncomfortable. 1. Standards are not about controlling her. They're about controlling yourself. Women test not because they are cruel, but because nature gave them a radar for weakness. Every time you tolerate disrespect, every time you allow mixed signals, every time you reward inconsistency with effort, you teach her one thing: I can give him less, and he will still stay. Liver. And that kills attraction faster than anything else. But when you have standards, real standards, you don't yell, you don't lecture, you don't threaten, you don't punish. You simply don't participate in any behavior that violates your peace. You step back, you detach, you let her feel the cost of her choices. Your standard is silent, but its impact is not, because she knows what it means. If I keep acting like this, I might lose him. 2. She respects what you enforce, not what you say. Words mean nothing to her. Every man can say, I won't tolerate disrespect. I value myself. I have boundaries. But how do you move when she actually crosses the line? Do you fold? Do you explain? Do you stay to avoid conflict? Do you hope she'll change if you're patient enough? Because that's the question she's really asking. Not, what are your standards? But, do you live them? Or just talk about them? Respect doesn't come from speeches. Respect comes from consequences, not dramatic ones, not angry ones, just steady, calm, unshakable distance. When her behavior stops aligning with your peace, the man who enforces his standards without hostility becomes unforgettable, not because he's harsh, but because he's rare. 3. The fear of losing him is the fear of losing stability. When a woman realizes she's with a man who can't be shaken, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, her entire behavior shifts. She speaks softer around him. She watches her tone. She thinks carefully before she disrespects. She tries to meet his expectations without being asked. Not because she's afraid of him, but because she's afraid of losing the version of herself she becomes around him. You see, a woman doesn't fear losing the relationship. She fears losing the man who brings out her best. A man who doesn't reward chaos, doesn't bend for validation, doesn't tolerate emotional laziness, doesn't abandon his purpose for comfort, doesn't stay where he is not respected. A man like that forces her to rise or lose him, and that fear is powerful, not toxic, not manipulative, but deeply biological. Men inspire devotion when they inspire respect, and respect only exists when standards are non-negotiable. 4. Her fear of losing you begins with this thought: if I lose him, I lose a man who actually respects himself. That's the anchor. That's the turning point. That's the seed from which real admiration grows. She can replace attention. She can replace effort. She can even replace affection. But she cannot easily replace a man with discipline, dignity, direction, restraint, emotional independence, a life that does not revolve around her. That man is 1 in 1,000, and she knows it, which is why a woman becomes more loyal, more feminine, more careful, more present, when she realizes the connection depends not on her beauty, but on her behavior. 5. The lesson. Respect is not something she gives because you're a good man. It's something she gives because you are a solid man, unshakable, grounded, principled. Standards make you rare. Rarity makes you valuable. Value makes you irreplaceable. And irreplaceable is what she fears losing. Be the man whose dignity is more attractive than his affection, and watch how her entire energy changes. There's one shift that changes everything in a man's romantic life. Stop trying to win her and become the man she has to win. Most men chase approval, affection, and reassurance. High-value men build themselves into a presence so strong that a woman naturally fears losing them, not because he threatens her, but because she knows he is not easily replaced. Being the prize doesn't come from being loud, arrogant, or emotionally distant. It comes from a depth of character most men never reach. A man becomes the prize when he lives in such alignment with his purpose that no woman, no matter how beautiful, becomes the center of his identity. A woman doesn't fear losing the man who needs her. She fears losing the man who chooses her, but never depends on her for validation. When you build a life rich with direction, discipline, friendships, fitness, mission, and momentum, she feels it immediately. She realizes you aren't standing still. You're moving with or without her. And that movement changes the dynamic completely. Because women don't chase men who orbit them. They chase the men whose lives have gravity. And gravity isn't created through words. It's created through the way you carry yourself. A man who is the prize doesn't over-explain, overshare, or over-give. He values his time. He protects his peace. He keeps his standards high, even when he's tempted to lower them for temporary closeness. He doesn't wake up wondering, is she going to stay? He wakes up asking, am I becoming the man I'm meant to be? And that energy shifts everything. When a woman senses your value, she becomes more intentional. Her tone softens. Her respect rises. She thinks before she pulls away. She chooses her actions more carefully because she knows she's not entitled to your presence. Women don't fear losing men who break themselves to be kept. They fear losing men who remain solid when everything around them shakes. Men whose emotions aren't dictated by her mood. Men who don't fold just to avoid conflict. Men who don't need to be validated to feel whole. A man becomes the prize the moment he no longer negotiates his worth. And here's the truth. You don't become unforgettable by giving her everything. You become unforgettable by requiring her best in order to stay close. Not through manipulation, not through games, but through identity. Through the discipline to live by your standards, even when emotions try to pull you off center. Women don't respect men who sacrifice their self-worth for connection. They respect the man whose connection never costs him himself, because attention can be replaced. Affection can be replaced. Even love can be replaced. But a man with direction, composure, emotional strength, and boundaries. A man who knows who he is, with or without her. That man, she does not forget, because she knows if she loses him, she's not losing a boyfriend. She's losing a standard, and standards rarely come twice. If there's one message you walk away with from this video, let it be this. You don't trigger her fear of losing you by trying harder. You trigger it by becoming a man who cannot be replaced. Not through mind games, not through fake confidence, but through identity, through the quiet, unshakable strength of a man who finally chooses himself. Because a woman doesn't fear losing the man who chases her. She fears losing the man who chases his purpose, his discipline, his evolution, and brings her along only if she matches his standard. Today, you have a choice. You can continue living as the man who bends, explains, pleases, and hopes. Or you can rise into the man who builds, leads, grows, and chooses. One path keeps you invisible, the other makes you unforgettable. And if you're ready for that shift, the real one, the internal one, then don't just click away from this video and do nothing. Take one step today that your future self will thank you for. Subscribe if you're done living on autopilot and want to join a community of men mastering discipline, emotional control, and stoic masculine presence. Comment below. I choose power, not just as words, but as a declaration. And if you're ready to level up your identity, your mindset, your relationships, and the way you carry yourself as a man, watch the next video I've linked for you. It will take you deeper. Remember this, you don't need her to fear losing you. You need to live in a way where losing you would be a tragedy. The world changes the moment you realize you are the prize, and your new life begins the moment you act like it.